Da, da, da. Hello, everyone. Let me just make sure our streams are going. Hello. Welcome. Let's do the watch party. And yep, we have people coming in. Hey, welcome, Chris. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good evening.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's 6 a.m. over there, is it? Yeah.
That's
And
correct. 6 a.m. Very excited to get up and talk with you all before you go to bed.
Well, before you get, I don't know, but are you like a morning person by any chance?
Normally I'm a morning person, but these days it just depends. Everything is different in this crazy COVID-19 environment. I feel like all the routines are changing.
No weekends, no weekdays. It's like merging into one
Exactly.
as well. Correct. Cool. So yeah, Daniel, you can start first.
No, so
watch party.
Welcome to our show. Welcome to the community. I think there's a lot of people from Malaysia who are actually your fans, and there are also a lot of people who are the first time listening to you and trying to know what you do. So you've been around for quite a while. You wrote 7 books. You've been actually doing a podcast for how many episodes?
1,200 episodes now. I've done it, every single day since January 1, 2017. So this week we crossed over to 1,200. So now I think it's 1,202 or something like that.
Oh my God. Yeah. That is crazy. And I've been listening to it also. So
amazing. Thank you.
It's really, really crazy. So we have a couple of people. Izzuddin Ismail, I'm on YouTube. I read your $100 startup. I think that was one of the previous book before this, correct?
Yeah.
So we're getting people coming in, and let's go. Bobby Ong from CoinGecko. Hi guys.
Hakim hey Bobby.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with a bit of a background where you come from. How do you end up doing this? I know you've been tirely explaining this for a while, but let's go the short version.
Oh, sure, of course. No, I'm not tired to explain it, and I'm so happy to see everybody who's watching today. I love Malaysia. I wish I could be there in person, but hopefully, again, one day we'll be able to do that. I've been several times, but it's been a while. So let's see. How did I get started? Well, short version. I think that's a good way to put it. In my 20s, I did a lot of different things. I was an aid worker for several years in West Africa. Then I began traveling to other countries. I was just really interested in travel and, exploring the world and such. I had always kind of worked for myself. I was always like a micro entrepreneur in the sense that I wasn't trying to build a big company. I never, scaled something, or sold it, in an exit strategy. But I never really wanted to do that. For me, it was like, entrepreneurship for me it's like a pathway to a lifestyle that is important to me. So I don't have to go into debt. I can travel. I can do what matters to me. So I did all that stuff for a number of years, and then when I was turning 30, I was like, okay, well, what's next? And I decided to start a blog called The Art of Nonconformity. So that was about 11 years ago, and I just wanted to write, some of my ideas and experiences, and not just my ideas and experiences, but some of the people I was meeting around the world as I was traveling. And I started this quest, to go to every country in the world, and I was writing about it during that time. And so that led to a lot of stuff that came, later. That book that someone mentioned, the $100 startup, that one's actually done well in Malaysia, so some people might know it there. Yeah. That was like the story of accidental entrepreneurs, of people who didn't necessarily intend to start a business, but they just found a way to do something that they really enjoyed and make, money from it, basically. And since then, I've just been doing, different things like that, writing different books. I started the podcast a few years ago called Side Hustle School that I do every year. I do different events, at least when I'm able to do events. Things are different now. And I have this new book that you mentioned briefly. This is called The Money Tree. It's about finding the fortune in your own backyard. So this book just came out last week in the States, and eventually it will come out in other countries, but I think it's still available for purchase, like as an import copy now. So now I'm just talking with people about the book and about, how to find different opportunities during this time of change.
Correct. But I need to ask first, like you mentioned earlier, since when you started, you have always wanted to become a lifestyle entrepreneur, right? When everyone is talking about raising funds, big exits. So what made you have that kind of clarity, even at a very young early in your career to know that what you want and what you don't want?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I knew everything at the beginning of my career in terms of, what I wanted and what I didn't want. I don't think I knew anything at all about this like startup model that you mentioned of people raising funds and all that. It's like, it just wasn't really on my consciousness then. This is, 21 years ago. So it wasn't as, familiar to most people then, which is a good thing because for me, I just kind of stumbled upon, this world of, at first it was reselling, of like buying things and reselling them, and not very complicated. It was very simple. But what attracted me to it was just the notion of freedom of like, oh, wow, if I do this, I can work on my own. I can work on my schedule. I can be a morning person or a night person. It doesn't matter what it is. And if I get a little bit better at it, then maybe I'll make more money. And this can allow me to travel. This can allow me to. So I don't know if I was even thinking like, you said lifestyle entrepreneurship. I didn't know if I had a name. It was just what can I do for myself. And then since I started it early, I was very fortunate to begin like at age 18, 19. Then I never wanted to do anything else. Like it's really hard for anybody who's watching who works for themselves. Once you start working for yourself, it's really hard to go back. It's hard to be like, oh, I've had this freedom for a long time. Now I'm going to go and get a job and be subject to somebody else's schedule and, all of that stuff. So that led me to a lot of other things, and I never wanted to do something different. Like I always wanted to change what I was doing in terms of the work, but not like go and work for a corporation or build a big startup, because that also has lots of constraints and restrictions.
Correct. It's just amazing that you knew. I mean, some of the terror and the horror stories you hear are correct. Like you raise funds, you're happy for like 2 seconds, and then after that you realize that, oh shit, I got like shit of other people to report to right now. I want my old lifestyle back, right?
Yeah. Isn't that funny? And like the whole goal is like eventually maybe one day I can have that lifestyle of just being able to work for myself and not, so it's like they go through all of that to get back to something that is accessible to everybody in the first place.
Yeah, true. It's starting at the end, but so I think sometimes John Maxwell mentioned this before. The destination disease is like you're climbing the ladder and then it's actually leaning against the wrong wall this whole time, right? So yeah, sad.
Right. And then you discover that you have spent all your time doing something that, somebody else wanted to do. It was somebody else's dream. It wasn't really your dream. So if you can discover what your own dream is sooner, then that's, so much the better.
I don't know, like Asians is a very common thing where the mom or the parents can't be doctors. They'll look at their kids and say, you better be a doctor. So leave my dream. And I don't know that happens to you, Daniel, but you seem like happy and easy going.
Well, I'm on my sabbatical, so technically I'm living my dream. So I'm supposed to be traveling, but that is the real unfortunate situation at this point in time. I want to know, actually, you've been traveling and you've been writing books. What's the difference between all your books, actually? So from Art of Non-Conformity to this, and why make you want to write this book about the money tree?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be an author and write books. Books were special to me as a kid. I grew up reading a lot. And I think a lot of business authors, I don't want to say that the book is not special to them, but to them, the book is just another piece of what they do. And maybe the book is like a marketing tool to get them to something else. So it's not a criticism. That's just how some people are. But for me, books were always like, I want to write books. I want to write good books. I really want to invest in this process so that hopefully, they can reach different people around the world who are in a place of wanting to make a change, but not really sure, how to do it, or maybe by providing stories of lots of different people who have gone down this road and experienced something for themselves and made something happen. So in terms of like the differences and such, the $100 Startup, that is like a case study book of different people, as I said, who've done this. One of the previous books was called Side Hustle, From Idea to Income in 27 Days. That one has also done well in Asia, and it's a very step-by-step kind of book. It's a very how-to, day one, you do this, day two, you do this. So that kind of style has a strength and a weakness. And, the strength is, it's very specific. It's like, okay, I know what to do. I do this, I follow this checklist. The weakness is that a lot of people don't read business books. A lot of people, like maybe people who are watching, like we like how-to books, but a lot of people don't. So the majority of people, who need to know more about financial freedom, who need to understand, these things that we're talking about. Like, they never think of themselves as being an entrepreneur, but they have all kinds of pressure and struggle, and they have debt, and they're trying to, get ahead for themselves and their families and to build financial freedom. So they're not going to read a business book. And so the idea with the money tree is I'm teaching through it. I'm still teaching a lot of these same principles that I taught in the $100 Startup, but I'm doing it in the form of a story. And so there's a narrative and there are characters, and you can read this book and hopefully be entertained. And you think, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like, I can just follow the story. But then at the end, you're going to actually realize you've actually learned something. And so the character is going through a lot of these same pressures and challenges that people have in terms of, oh, my job is weighing on me. Oh, I'm not making enough money. I have these debts I need to pay off, and this is affecting my relationship. It all kind of happens together. It's not like one thing happens to you and then that's just part of your life and it's compartmentalized. When you're experiencing financial pressure, that affects every part of your life. And so this character Jake, he has to like get out of it somehow, and at first what he tries doesn't work, and he has to get some advice and experiment, and he does some travel as well. So I think like the idea is like this story is accessible to people, that they can enjoy it but also learn from it without having the how-to step-by-step guide.
But I think in a way, I was quite surprised when you went on this direction, because it reminds me of like the E-Myth, Michael Gerber, which is very much stories, semi-fiction. Yeah, he's having a conversation with his phone, so that's another story. Then Robin Sharma's The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, also very metaphoric. So I'm always a fan of Mitch Albom's book as well. So he tells amazing stories through real life stories sometimes. So when I first saw the synopsis of the book, I'm like, wow, that's something really, a trajectory, I guess, a tangent from what your normal book is. And I think after watching the interview with Chase, I realized that you are trying to get to a crowd that normally will never pick up, like you say, a business book. It's like, okay, this book, let's say it's a parable, like Richest Man in Babylon, probably one of the earliest personal finance book, and it's still relevant today as it is like, I think almost 100 years ago. It was published in 1912. That's a long time. Think about it. So I think that one will be something that perhaps moms will pick it up. In this current lockdown period, I think a lot of times we are forced to think out of the box, and when we don't know how, we'll think of going to a business book, but we never really thought about going for a storybook. So I think I like that kids will love it, because kids will not read a business book because it belongs to my dad. But I can imagine this book is something that the teachers would narrate to the kid. And I don't know, maybe a kid's version of the book, that could be the next idea you can credit.
Yeah, we'll see.
And like myself inside, planting little money seed tree, you never know, right?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned like this is timely. Like all of a sudden everybody's worried and anxious about their finances. I just saw in the U.S. now we almost have 20% unemployment, which is extremely strange. And we've had like 3% unemployment for years and years and years. So it's a massive increase. I don't know what the situation is in Malaysia, but like I think all over the world people are just worried and anxious about all kinds of things. But obviously I didn't plan for this. It's like I wrote this book, maybe a year and a half ago almost. Publishing is very slow. It takes a long time to like go through these different processes and such. So it's interesting that it came out now, because I was supposed to be doing a big tour across North America and then hopefully elsewhere as well. But now I can't do that. So it's like I'm impacted by it, but I have to change. I have to be willing to adjust, just like I think everybody does. So it offers like opportunities and challenges for me, just like it does for everyone. But in some ways, it's a little bit of a creative risk for me. It's because in publishing, like if you're writing the same kind of book all the time, that's almost what publishers want. Publishers don't want you to take risks as an author.
Oh, okay.
They want it to be very predictable. They're like, oh, he wrote this book, Side Hustle. Now we want Side Hustle 2. Like the return of sequel. They always want that, because it's just the industry is very much about conformity, just like so many industries. And it's like, we know how to put this book in the bookshop. It goes next to this book. We tell readers, if you bought this book, then you buy this one. So if you come out with something different, it is a little bit of a creative risk. And I'm always encouraging people to take risks and to do different things. And so I have to be able to do that too.
Is Penguin that is actually the publisher, right? So how do you convince them to like not, I don't know, like...
Yeah, it was a conversation for sure. It was, there was definitely some skepticism in the beginning when I was like, hey, I want to write this new book, and they were like, what is this? Like you said, semi-fiction. That's an interesting phrase. I don't think I've heard that or used that before. But that's basically what it is. It's semi-fiction.
Yeah.
It's hybrid.
Because it feels so relatable, actually. Like when I first got introduced to the character, like, these are my friends. That this is possibly me. That was a
That's
period.
metaphoric, right?
That's the idea, exactly.
You
That's
yourself in that object.
That's exactly the idea. Like I got an email from like the main character. He is a guy. He is like 28 years old, but I got an email from someone who she was like, I'm a 41-year-old woman, but I still kind of relate to this guy, because I can see the situation he was in. He was working this corporation, at the corporation. There were some good people and then some people that were just not nice. And like, there are all these expectations on what he had to do. And she's like, that's how it is at my job. And so my hope, is that people in Malaysia can read the book and say, oh, this guy's American, but I can still see some of these same things in my job, or, maybe the financial pressure that he has, this is affecting me in a similar way. So that's my hope in it, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, maybe
well,
not.
I think it will work. Yeah, because I think that's how storybooks propagate. Like at one point you feel like Snow White, at one point you feel like the Seven Dwarfs, at one point you feel like Cinderella. So because it's so ambiguous, and that's how Disney is milking the money, I think. So I think comic heroes, superheroes who are more relatable, like Batman or Iron Man, is more relatable than, okay, Superman, you need to kind of have alien parents and have your planet self-destruct and fall off to Earth. And but to have my parents being murdered in an alley, okay, not that it really happened, it sounds more believable, right? So that's why Batman has always been despite not having superpowers, I think he's more relatable to the masses.
Yeah, that's a great observation. So if you take that observation, you carry it like into the world of entrepreneurship. You could say that the superheroes, are people like Elon Musk or whatever, or whoever you want to name, Steve Jobs, people name different people, and it's like, obviously those people are interesting and we can learn from them. We're all fascinated by them, but they're not very relatable. Like nobody could say that these people are relatable because they're not. And so oftentimes what happens, it's very common in journalism to have these like profile pieces in a magazine about here is what Warren Buffett eats for breakfast every day, and you're like, why do I care? Like, because if you eat what he eats for breakfast every day, then you will be like him. Or if the productivity hacks, of Elon Musk or something, it's like, you're not going to be like Elon Musk no matter what you do. So, but everybody can be like themselves, right? Everybody can be like who they are. They actually have a strength and a skill within themselves. It's actually going to be a lot more interesting and more powerful than, trying to be somebody else. So it's like if Batman tried to be Superman or vice versa, like they're not going to, it's not going to work. You have to embrace your own superpower.
But I don't know, I thought, because I came up to your stuff together with Tim Ferriss as well, a mutual friend, I'm sure. But I always find that I can relate better to you because you seem a lot more normal, because Tim and his experiments are like, okay, man, I like that guy, but it's just, his extremism is like, okay. And because I also respect your relationship with Jolie as well. So it's something that, Tim, I don't know what's his latest update relationship. So he openly admits that he struggles with it, but I always look at yours as it's a every man's achievable hero. But then you have Tim on the other end, or even AJ Jacobs on the other end of the spectrum, who has his weird experiments again. Like, yeah. Jay, then you want to say something? Sorry to interrupt just now.
No. I was gonna say the relatability is so important because one of the projects we end up doing with the Malaysia Central Bank to educate people on personal finance is like, we cannot showcase like millionaires, we cannot showcase like really successful people, but we need to showcase people who are within striking distance. So it's like a level up from what they are. So to quote 0 to 1 for Peter Thiel, it's like they are 1 but you're 0. So it's just that one step ahead.
Correct.
And that's what I love about like side hustle school, like all the examples that you give. And one of the things that we actually everyone is facing, basically the sense of hopelessness, and people are drowning. And like, what would you suggest to actually get us to gain back control of our life? Because like, you can't go, like, okay, maybe you can go out, but some folks in Malaysia can't go out, and etc.
Yeah. So the situation there is you can't go outside your house at all. Is that what it is like that for now?
Only one person can go out, right?
Yeah, only one person at the head of the house can go out.
Oh yeah, wow! And they are checking people and such and everything.
Yeah, like $1,000 of summons if you're caught doing not going out. So
yeah, it's so hard. I mean, we were saying earlier, like in the States, obviously the U.S. is so big. It's like you have different rules in different places, and everybody's fighting over this and all that. But where I live on the West Coast, it's not as bad as that. In the sense that I'm able to go out and I can walk around my neighborhood, but everything is closed. And there's nobody else out really for the most part, and such. So hopelessness. I mean, that's a good thing to talk about, because I think people don't talk about it enough in the entrepreneurial space, or in like maybe you have some conversation about hopefulness in a mental health conversation or space or something, but the reality is this is affecting all of our lives right now in so many different ways. And so I think people experience fear when there's something that's unknown or different or unfamiliar. Now this is extremely unknown or different, familiar. Like I know also, like in Asia, you guys have had like the bird flu and SARS and such, but still I think this is on a whole other level, right? This is a whole other level, the whole planet, and there's a lot of, uncertainty and answers about the timeline and what's going to happen next and everything. So, I mean, I think the first thing is like, we just acknowledge like, wow, this is a thing, like we don't have to just pretend. We don't have to just say it's okay, be happy, it's all right, don't worry about that. Like obviously this is a thing. So I think that's the first part. And then the second thing is understanding that everybody is experiencing this simultaneously, which is extremely unusual. Before maybe there's some pandemic that's regional focused, but then even it's a short time, it goes away. And now obviously like everybody all over the world in different ways are experiencing it. And so I think the only thing we can do is try not to obsess over things that are out of our control, because there's nothing that we can do, most of us, to actually change the fundamental situation. Like we can be safe, we could try to, flatten the curve and everything like people are doing around the world and such. But that's a very passive action. Like to do that, you just have to stay away from people, basically. You have to wash your hands and stay away from people. Okay, so then what next, And so I think the only thing that we can do, those of us, that are in some other field besides healthcare, if you're not working in the hospital, I think the question is, what can I make? What can I create? What is my role to contribute? And, my role is sharing stories and writing and having these conversations. Everybody has something to contribute and something to give. And I think there's nothing at all wrong with thinking about how you can do that in an economically beneficial way. Like you don't have to say, I'm going to put a pause on making money during this time. Like you have to make money, of course, for yourself, for your future, your family. So it's a question of like, what are the opportunities now? How can I find opportunity in a time when everything is changed? There are good businesses and bad businesses during this time, just like every other time. Like if you always wanted to be a travel agent, maybe don't do that now. It's not a good thing to do. But if you always wanted to be a community builder, this is a great time to do it, because everybody is looking for community and people are connecting more and more online. I mean, we always were before, but now it's like next level, just because, people have to. So there are opportunities, and you have to look and say, what are the opportunities for me?
They say the truth is that, Chris, like Daniel, yourself and myself, we have started business or entrepreneurship or whatever you call it at a very young age. So, but I do know some friends that are going through this. So the first 2 weeks were like, nah, it's okay. It's just like honeymoon. Just stay at home. It's going to be fun. And then when it got extended again, okay, shit's getting real. But when it got extended again, it's like, that's where, there are 3 levels of F. You flight and you do the big F thing. I think they are in the panic, frantic state right now. But surprisingly, there are still some people who like, you know what, once the lockdown is lifted, everything will go back to normal. But I don't know. I think habits have been changed in the last 21 days. Like used to be, you can go and meet someone, you can meet a client and then, let's have coffee. But now your client will be, hey, Chris, can we just do it over a Zoom call for like 15 minutes? So habit, because they're used to doing that right now. So a lot of people are still, they think that once the whole thing is over, like a magic wand, everything will just go back to normal. But what do you think? I'm sure you have people like that around you, but how do you, I feel fear for them. Actually, I'm like, it's not denial. It's like,
I mean, they will learn one way or another. I don't think we're going back to the way things were before. So in some ways we will, and that would be good. Once the restrictions are limited, maybe when there's a vaccine or something. But it's like you said, a lot of these changes are going to be kind of, set essentially. Yeah. But some of them are positive, right? So some of them are positive changes. So you mentioned like this thing about having a meeting or something like online. I think there will be a lot fewer business meetings, that are unnecessary to travel to essentially. When a lot more people who are working remotely, this is what I'm hearing a lot in the States from people who said, I always wanted to work remote before, but my boss never let me. My corporation said nobody can get their job done if you're working remotely. We have to all be together. And now obviously like they're figuring out ways to do it,
Correct.
And so I think when it's all over, it's not like every corporate employee is all of a sudden going to go back, and start commuting again and deal with being on the public transport or driving or whatever. I think a lot of them are going to say, hey, this worked before. Why doesn't this work for me now? Yeah. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting. People who didn't know how to use technologies like Zoom or any other web conference, maybe they were just resistant to it. Maybe they just, I don't know, for whatever reason they didn't like it, but they have to now. So it's funny when you're forced to do something, all of a sudden you can do things that you didn't realize before, even if it's something simple like using this particular software. Or it's just adjusting to this whole way of life. So, no, I don't think we're going back to the way things were before. And in some ways, that has like negative effects. But in other ways, it has positive. So you have like all these things are what they are. And so you have to look at what's within your control, because it's not very helpful to think about what is the world that I would like to be. What's the world that I would imagine with my magic wand, like you said. You can't do that. So you have to ask, what is the world that I can create within the ability that I have?
Yeah. So I think, I don't know, a trick question, because I know you're going to have another book come up in another, 180 days or, a year and a half. But the virtual book tour versus the actual book tour, come on, you got to say there are some certain perks of doing a virtual book tour as well, right? But now logistically, you can ship the book anywhere. So do you think there's a need for you to travel around? I know you like to travel, but is there a need to travel around to achieve the same result?
Is there a need to? No, I don't think there is a need to. It's
Okay.
for me, it was more just like, this is my approach. This is my style. I like to meet people one-on-one. It's not so much meeting them one by one. It's the idea of connecting with people one by one and over time and building these long-term relationships. When I first got started, like 11 years ago, and I had this book come out, The Art of Nonconformity. I didn't have a very good deal from my publisher. Like nobody knew who I was. So they didn't really support it very much. I had to go and support it myself. And so, here in the States, I went to all 50 states. And like, for those who haven't been to America, it's like you have big states like California and New York, but then you have lots of really small places where like very few people live. It's very like countryside and rural. And nobody goes to those places, as an author or as a speaker or something. But that was the whole point to me. The whole point was like, I actually want to go to those places. And if there's like one person there somewhere that's heard of my blog, I'm going to go and, have tea with them or something. So I liked that. I felt very connected to that approach. But I think, to your point, like I did that for a long time. And maybe after a while, I was doing it because that's what I knew how to do, or that's what I was comfortable in doing. As opposed to it being the most effective or something. And like, not everything in life has to be the most effective. Like you can do lots of things that you love to do or you enjoy. It's not about like, how effective is my, hobby or whatever it is that I like to do. But, in terms of reaching people, it has been a good experience for me. Just over the past 8 days, it's been a very short time since the book came out. But speaking to groups virtually and doing live streams and such, I think it's good for me to learn to do this and to reach people wherever they are. I mean, it's interesting because people appreciate it when I'm able to go to their town or something, but then online I'm hearing from people that are like, I never was able to see you before because, I live in this country or this town or something, and now I'm able to see you. So I think it's good. I don't know that I'll go back to doing it the way I was before, but I don't know. We'll see.
No,
we're going to record this version. And the next book, we're just going to hold you to it. Yes, sorry, Daniel.
We still need to get you back to Malaysia. The last time you were here was like so long back. So definitely.
Which book was it when you came?
I don't know when I was there last. I don't know if I was there for a specific book. I was just there traveling. But I did something there. Maybe it was like 3 years ago or something. So it's been a long time. So if we say 3 years, and now probably will be at least 3 to 6 months minimum before I can go back there. I think it is overdue, so I will come back to Malaysia, but maybe not all 50 U.S. states.
So let's talk about the book and what are the key lessons we can actually learn from that, because I think some of the audience been actually quite curious.
Great.
No spoiler, but I think let's
of course, no problem. Yeah. So first of all, what it's about, I mentioned the main character. His name is Jake. He has a good job. He is a hard worker, but yet he's discovering, just like a lot of people are, that that's not enough. Like, you can have a good job and work hard, but yet you're still vulnerable to all kinds of external pressures, which is exactly what we're seeing now, all over the world. People who's like, oh, I had a good job, but now I don't have that job, or my company is really struggling, and so they're laying me off or furloughing me, or the industry has changed, or whatever it is. So anyway, he has a really good job, or a good job, not a really good job, decent job. But then because of all this debt he has from university, it's affecting the rest of his life, as mentioned, and he has to figure out, what do I do? And the first thing he realizes is, I can't just work harder. I'm already working hard. I can't just be part of the gig economy, because everybody talks about that all the time, as if that's like the savior for everything. And you can be part of, everybody can go and join this thing and, drive for, whatever it is now, or deliver food or something. But that's very low money. It's very low paid, and you don't actually have much freedom. And they control the competition. The platform sets all the rules. So that's not a good answer either, long term. And so he has to figure out, okay, what kind of little business can I start? So it's this, exploration process of learning. He goes to this group called The Third Way, where everybody at the group is trying to start a little business. Everybody has the same challenge, the same problem. And the group's mentor or leader challenges him to make $1,000 in the next week. And he's like, wow, $1,000 in a week. I don't know how to do that. But he sets off on this process and learns how to do it. So my hope is, in terms of the lessons, the reader who is learning about this is also going to learn the same things. The reader is going through the same experience. The reader is like, how would I possibly make, whatever the amount of money is, in a short period of time? Oh, maybe there is something that I can do. And then it kind of goes on to, he has a different challenge, of starting a service. And so my hope is the reader will also be like, oh, what kind of service could I start? Here's the thought process. Here's the thought process that this character goes through. What if I did the same thing, and how can I apply it? So it's essentially like the story of micro-entrepreneurship. It's a story of being able to create freedom for yourself through the form of an income-generating project. But it's just told in this storytelling style, which I think will actually be more impactful, in the long term, and more memorable, for readers than just reading the how-to book. So that's more or less what I'm trying to accomplish overall in the book.
So you mentioned that this is the third way. So what are the first and second way?
Oh yeah, right. So the third way, that's the name of the group. The first way of starting a business is like opening a retail store or a coffee shop, or anything that you see on the side of the road in a storefront in Kuala Lumpur or anywhere else. And to do that, obviously, you need capital. You need access to money of some kind. You can borrow it from the bank, or from your parents, or from your credit card, or whatever it is. Somehow you need access to money to do that. And it also involves risk, and it also involves a long time frame. If you open a store, a physical store somewhere, you're not going to find out next month if it's going to work. It often takes a long time. You might be losing money during that time. The second way is the startup way, which a lot of people are familiar with, the startup way of Silicon Valley, of, okay, I have this idea, and now I'm going to make a pitch deck, and I'm going to go talk to a bunch of investors, and hopefully they'll believe in me enough to say, yes, Daniel, now you can go and start your idea. They have to give me permission, basically, in the form of a check or something. So both of those ways are dependent on other people. Both of those ways, you have to have access to the right relationships. You have to have access. It's not just money. It's also, like I said, relationships and connections and those things. So what if you aren't connected? What if you don't have money? And what if you just have an idea and want to start something for yourself? So the third way, that's what that is about. It's about, everything I talk about on Side Hustle School or some of the other books, just regular people out there, not the Batman, not the Superman or the Elon Musk, but that person who is looking at something that they are good at, some knowledge they have, and finding a way to convert that into a product or service. And they do it without spending money, or a very small amount of money, and in a short period of time. And then once it's out, then they see what can I learn? how do I need to adjust or change? Maybe this project didn't work, which is common. It's okay. If it doesn't work, then I haven't lost a lot. I haven't lost a lot of money. Maybe I spent some time on it, but I've learned through the process, and now my next project will be more successful. So that is what the third way is about. And people have been doing that, all over the world for a long time. But I'm just trying to crystallize it into this model. That people can say, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. I don't necessarily want to have the startup where I'm trying to recruit investors, but I love the idea of being able to have more control for myself and, extra money coming in for myself.
So when you actually talk about in terms of startups, a lot of these startups don't really make money. It takes a really long time for them to make money. Like, how do you actually spot a profitable idea?
How do you start a profitable idea?
How do you spot one?
Oh, spot one. Okay. How do you spot a profitable idea? I think it comes to looking at two different things. And so first you look at yourself and you look and say, what are the things that I know about? What are my skills? And making a list of those skills. And often when people start doing this, they only think about, oh, I went to university, I got this engineering degree or computer science, and then I went to work at this company, and then this is the role that I had. So they write those things down. And they think, well, I'm not sure how to go from this, to my profitable idea or whatever. But the problem is those skills that's only like one part of what you know about. Like maybe you have this piece of paper that came from the university that says, Daniel Maverick, now you have received this degree, perhaps. But there's lots of other stuff that you know about, and you knew things before you went to university. The things what are you watching YouTube? Like how many hours a day are you watching YouTube or whatever it is? And what videos are you watching? Like what are you really obsessed about? What are you interested in and excited about? And then what are your friends asking you about? Like when your friends need advice about something, what do they come to you for? Or if you're working with a team, whether virtually or at your job, what does your team look to you to do? So you have a list of like your hard skills and also soft skills. So I talk about this some too. Like a hard skill is like, I know how to do this coding. Like I know Python, I know this particular coding thing or something. But a soft skill is like, I have the ability to follow up. I have the ability to get things done. I am good at working with people in terms of trying to communicate and, get something out of them or whatever. So all these skills, sorry, I'm going into this a bit, but I think it's important. Like all these skills, you make an inventory of the skills. That's the first part. The second part is, okay, what does the world need? What do people need? And, from there, it's like you can identify problems, like what is inefficient, what is lacking. I was looking at, did a story recently about somebody who is doing like standardized test tutoring for everybody who's trying to get into American universities, which is, people in Asia, people here as well. Like it's a very competitive environment. You have to have a top score and such. And so they have lots of tutors, but it's also a very competitive field because everybody wants to tutor. It's, you get paid a lot to do it. So, this guy in New York found a way to really specialize, and he focused on one element of the test and got really good at that. And because he specialized in that test, it was a need people had, he was good at it, et cetera. He ended up being very, very successful with it, to the point where other people were actually hiring him to do the other kinds of tutoring. So ironically, by choosing something very specific, he became more of an expert in other things. So it's about like your skill and something out there that is in the world. And maybe just one more thing, if we think about the time that we're in now, you can also look and say, okay, well, what are the needs now? And I mentioned community. I think so many people are searching for community and connection in lots of different ways. Is there some way that you can meet that? Remote work. With these millions of people all over the world. I don't know if you saw the statistic about Zoom, about how they have 200 million users now, and it was like 10 million in December, like 20x growth in like a few months. So all these people are adjusting to remote work. They have needs in terms of the technology, in terms of learning how to set your routine and your structure and all the stuff about working from home that maybe some of us take for granted, but they haven't experienced before. I mean, these are just a couple of examples. I feel like once you start thinking like this, you can see lots of different needs and problems. And then it's a matter of like, what skill do I have? Like, is there some intersection here? If not, I'll just go on to the next thing.
Yeah. Cool.
So you also, during Side Hustle School, you mentioned a lot about, can you give some case studies that are quite interesting because I think 12,000 over, sorry, not 12,000, 1,200 over episode over 3 years. So it's actually, what are the key highlights that you have come across so far?
The key highlights. I continue to be surprised at how many different opportunities and ways there are to make money. I was a little bit worried when I started it because I committed to doing it every day. I said, I'm going to do it every single day, for a year, 7 days a week, no breaks. And I promised at the beginning of January 2017, you're going to hear a different story every day, a different story. So I was like, where are the stories going to come from? And I don't want to repeat things. I don't want to just say the same thing over and over. Oh, this last week, this guy was doing this week, somebody else doing the same thing. It has to be unique a little bit. But here I am, 1,200 episodes in, and people are still I'm still seeing like creative ways and things that I've never, thought about before. Different topics to make a blog about or a podcast, or this guy was really into tap dancing. Do you know tap dancing? Have you seen like the tap, tap, tap on the thing? It's this crazy old school kind of thing. This guy made this tap dancing course in Australia, and the course is now online. Like he was a professional tap dancer, but then, he's getting older or something. And so he makes the course, and now this course is, making a lot of money on the side. And so you think that's such a specialized thing, but people are into it. There's a lot of people that want to do that. So whatever it is that you're good at, maybe you think I'm the only one, or it's such a small subculture, but that's often a sign that that's something good to monetize.
Yeah. I think because of the smallness or the tiniest, because of the interest is being so niche, the bigger bigger conglomerates, the bigger companies, come on, we're not gonna, because if you look at the bell curve, obviously those are like the side of the curve. But when you do micro, I think you can cover a lot of this micro interest that you never knew exist. And just like you mentioned about community, because I think through the process of these side hustles, you say, holy shit, there's actually someone in Austria who do the same, who's fascinated with the same stuff as I am. And the kind of kinship or bonding is just, and because of the years, I think technology has allowed us to do that as well. I think side hustling 20 years ago would be a bit different. I think we are limited by geographical reasons. Yeah, that's a good question there.
Yeah, so Nicholas Gerard asked, what are some of the reasons that people hold back from starting their side hustle? I think
it's a great question. You want to say something, Daniel? What were you going to say?
Oh, no. Go ahead. I think you have a good analogy on that.
Oh, sure. But I like to know your answers as well. There's something else I was thinking just briefly before that question, what Maverick was saying about the technology and how it's changed over 20 years. So here's an interesting thing. Over the past 3 months now, it's changing even more rapidly because now, even like we've seen a shift since 20 years for sure. But now there's even a whole other big group of people that are all of a sudden embracing more things online than they were. Like everybody has been online, but maybe they had a Facebook account, or maybe they watched YouTube videos. They weren't that familiar with e-commerce. They weren't that familiar with like virtual meetings and such. So again, like for people watching, maybe all of us were already in that group. We're familiar with it already, but a whole other people, millions and millions of people are entering this world. So more and more opportunities now, I think, in the past 3 months. Now that question from Nicholas, it's a really good question because I feel like sometimes people think that the problems are external and they're like, all these other things are holding me back. But actually what they're being held back is it's something psychological. And this is very common. Like I think everybody thinks they're the only one, or they're like, oh, I'm the only person that's, experiencing this like insecurity, or I think I'm not good enough, or I think people will make fun of me, or I will fail, or, whatever it is. So I hear this all the time. And I think, a couple of things, first of all, if you're like, what if I fail? Well, if you fail, what is the cost of failure doing something like this? You're not spending your life savings, you're not, necessarily quitting your job even. You're just like where I am right now, I'm starting something and I will see what happens. You don't even have to tell your family about it if you don't want to in the beginning. This is something that I hear a lot actually from Asia in particular. People are like, what about my family and such? Well, you can tell them about it once it's working. You know what I mean? But you don't have to tell them every single thing along the way. Like you can start different things and see what happens. But the other thing you have to ask is, what if it actually succeeds? What if it succeeds? Like I'm so concerned about the failure, but what is the life that I want? And to get to the life that I want, I know I have to make some changes. And so what is the long-term cost of not changing? What is the long-term cost of not trying? the long-term cost of having an idea and doing all this research, and I'm like watching these conversations, I'm reading books, but I'm not actually doing anything about it. There's a psychic cost to that. You're just going to start feeling bad about yourself. And so to somebody who has been like researching a long time, I think you need to stop reading books. Even like I'm an author and I'm like, stop reading books, go and you need to experiment, you need to do something. And when you think, oh, I'm not good enough, or you think I'm an imposter, like I hear that I'm an imposter or something, like the real imposter is the person in you that's not moving forward. The real imposter is the one that's holding you back. And if you have a dream to do something, if you're like even watching, like, participating in these kinds of webinars and such, you're already like self-identifying as a person who wants to improve and to grow and to change. Because, right now you're watching this when you could be watching, Avengers or something, or you could be doing whatever else, but you're like, no, I actually want to invest in myself. So since you are in that place, congratulations, you're already like further along than most people. I think you need to realize that, you have a responsibility to yourself, to those around you. And this could actually be a really good thing. It could actually, like, maybe all your fears are unfounded. And once you start going down that road, you're like, wow, I'm so glad I started. I'm so glad. I hear that all the time. People are like, I waited for a long time, but then finally I started, and I'm like, I'm so glad I did.
But I think about failure as well. Sometimes, I don't know, because maybe for Daniel, maybe for you as well, Chris, because if you fall a couple of times, after a while, there's some form of immunity to it. And I also realized that when you fail, you think the whole world knows, but the truth is that actually people forget. It's like they got their own life to live, and they're selfish or blindsided in their own way. They could be forgetting what you're supposed to do anyway. So I think a lot of times we are afraid to be judged by the people around us. But the truth is that the people around us are more forgetful than we think. It's like, oh yeah, this is just another one of his stupid ideas. And guess what? It didn't work. It worked. They lost track over time, right? So I think sometimes it's the inner conversations that we have that stops us more often than whatever that's happening on the outside.
Yeah. I think something that's very helpful to understand is people don't think about us as much as we imagine they do. Whether positive or negative, most people think about themselves. And so they don't really care. It's not like they are judging you. It's not like they are thinking about their own lives. So once you realize that, at first it's a little bit depressing. You're like, wow, nobody thinks about me that much. But then you're like, actually, that's very good. Nobody thinks about me, so I don't have to care. I can do what's important to me.
Correct. That's a good question, actually. Someone actually asked that way. Is it like slower compared to the first and second way?
Is it what's the third way?
Yeah.
Is it slower in terms of which part?
Slower to scale, because as a micro enterprise, I think if you don't have investors.
Oh, sorry, I see the question now. I wasn't reading the question. That's from Facebook user. Good to see you, Facebook user.
It's Lily, actually.
Oh, great. Would I say it's slower to scale? Yeah, I think it is slower to scale. I think that's not necessarily the goal for a lot of people doing the third way. A lot of people are not trying to scale. So if you imagine what is involved with scale, it often involves, to scale rapidly, you sometimes do need that investment of capital. You sometimes do need a lot of employees. At least that's the traditional way of thinking of scale. Maybe there's some other ways to do it. But when I'm talking about these kinds of projects, it's not small amount of money. I'm talking about people that are making like a significant amount of money, often their full-time job income or more, and they're doing it in a way that's passive. So this is something that actually can change your life and open up lots of opportunities, whether to travel when we're able to travel again, or to, pay off your debt, or to buy a home, or these are very significant things. So it's not necessarily about trying to scale. It's about what is most appropriate for this business, what is most appropriate for me in my life. And if it turns out that the answer, is, oh, actually, I do want to go down that startup path, then that's fine. Like, you should do what's important to you, what's good for you. But I think a lot of people go down that path because they don't know there's an alternative, or they think that's the only way. And the reality is, it is very hard to be successful that way. Like, most projects are not going to get funded. And even most projects that are funded are not going to be successful. Like, even startup investors say that. So if you could increase your odds of success, why wouldn't you choose a project that is that has more feasibility, and it's going to be quicker to understand if it will work or not?
And I also want to add, because it's the third way is not like you have to choose one of each way.
Right.
You can you can again, it's side hustle. You can do it on the side, and you can allocate time to build your own income generating, while you want to pursue a longer term goal on building your side, your startup, or to do an NGO or something else. So that is a bit of your life purpose. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in terms of.
Oh, you're right. You can do, yeah, exactly. It can be a hybrid approach. You can do one thing for a while or something else after that, and that's why I think it's good to start while you still have a job, while you're still doing something else, so that you can building this thing, and in case there's another, unpredictable event that changes everything, either in the world or in your life in particular, you are somewhat prepared. At least you're further along than not having anything at all.
Yeah, but I think money in a way is also an enabler. It's not everything. Of course, some people will say, "Now that's bullshit, Maverick. Money is everything." But I don't know. I've seen people who are rich but they're not happy. I've seen people who are poor, in travels and all that, and they find happiness in the little things, right? So, so I think the whole concept of money is different, and at the same time, is what kind of lifestyle do you want? Like, do you want to exit? I guess what my mom used to say is that, what do you want place on your tombstone, right? As someone who started the business and went IPO, or a great father and a great son. So something.
Yeah, right. You want to say IPO on your tombstone? Probably not.
Yeah. Mei, very good quote as well.
Thanks, Mei.
So Mei is asking, the real imposter is not the person that experiment, but the person that's holding you back. Really love that. So thank you very much, Mei.
Thank you, Mei.
So we have Subaraj. How do you unlearn, and why you decided to learn at your pace, and what forced? Sorry, I do not understand this question.
How did you unlearn? Well, maybe we can say something about it. How did you unlearn?
Yeah.
So maybe what they're asking is like, there's a lot of things that you learn, or you were told, or you're taught, and then you realize actually that's not accurate, or maybe that's not accurate for me. It's not accurate for what I want to do. Like, I have been told this, this is like a prescribed course. And now all of a sudden I realize I want to do something different for my life. And so maybe the process of getting away from that is unlearning. And as for me, like we said, how did I unlearn? I was fortunate in some ways because I never learned. Like, I never went down the traditional path. Okay. Like, I never had this corporate job that I had to like learn to do things differently. I knew kind of early on that I didn't want that. But I do know from like many people in my community, I mean, often the way they unlearn is they start seeing different examples. They start hearing stories. Maybe they begin to, read books or have these conversations where they're like, oh, there are a lot of people out there that actually see the world a different way. And so then you realize, even if my friends don't understand, even if my family, they don't understand my desire to do something different, I'm not the only person who feels this way. So that's maybe one good thing. And then I think the second thing is just to begin experimenting and try some small things. Even just change some of your routine, change some of the things that you do. Like I said, you're already doing a good job investing in yourself by joining these kinds of conversations, as opposed to just watching movies or whatever. So the more that you can invest in yourself, the more that you can try things. I think that's a good way to unlearn.
Cool. Okay, there's one question that's because a lot of people look at you and then they look at the gig economy, they look at freelancing. So there's this burning question of a girl I know. So she likes to travel, an avid traveler, but at the same time, she's also trying to manage her blog. And she saw what you did. And it's like, I guess she's trying to ask her, how do you get it done? Because at one point, you need the money. At one point, you want to do the traveling, which costs money. And at another point, you need to build visibility for your blog, right? So any tips on that?
Yeah, so this is a great question, because I think a lot of people experience this as they're trying to get started. Like, once they actually have an idea and they do have some clients if it's a service business, or they have some customers if it's a product business, how then do they manage that with the other, desires of their life and such? I think there are seasons sometimes, and you might have a season in which this is my business season. I need to actually spend a lot of time on my business, and I'm not going to feel guilty about that. Because if I can build the business in the right way, then I will be able to travel more or do what's important to me. Often when I was traveling, for 10 years, I was, going around to every country in the world. And I think people had a different idea or like a different image of what it was really like. They thought it was very romantic and like every single day I'm like going into the jungle to like hike and I'm on a camel or something like. And I was like, there's a lot of days when I'm just kind of in my hostel or guest house or hotel and I'm just working. It's kind of boring, right? But that's okay because that allows me to do the other stuff that's important to me. So I don't think you have to feel bad about that. And then at the same time, you should also not feel bad or not feel guilty if you want to take the trip, or if you're like, today, I don't actually need to spend a lot of time trying to get more clients because I have already done that to the point that I can do what's important to me. So I think there are different seasons. The other thing I would say about it is I noticed that in doing this for 10 years and starting lots of different projects and writing books while I was traveling, I noticed that it was a lot easier to maintain something while I was traveling, like maintain an existing business or project than it was to start a new one. And so like if I was trying to write a book, for example, or begin a new like website or something, membership site, I wasn't very good at it if I was like going place to place all the time and like checking into different hotels or hostels. I really needed to be in one place for that and just spend a few weeks or months or however long it was working on that for the most part. But then once I got it up and running, and it was just a question of like, I need to do the maintenance, I need to do customer service, I need to do the project work. That's a little bit different because you don't have to think as creatively. You don't have to, like, you're doing the same kinds of tasks all the time. And so you learn how to better manage your time. So maybe try to figure out what your business is and then start traveling, or at least get something started and then see how you can maintain that as you go.
I think what you said is that once it becomes a routine, it's a lot easier to manage. But when you're starting up, a million things can go wrong. And the last thing you want is you don't have internet connection or there's no power. Because I started ventures on the road as well. Yes, a million things. The product launch is like delayed by 48 hours just because I couldn't get broadband, for example.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've had those experiences too. It's very frustrating, but then I always ask myself, well, if I stayed at home all the time or whatever, like obviously in a different age than COVID-19, if I stayed at home all the time, I wouldn't have that problem. But then again, I don't want to stay at home all the time. So,
True.
pros and cons to everything.
So there's two relating questions. Titus is asking, is there in any industry that is more crisis-proof than others? The other question actually came in earlier, is that I'm a programmer, indie entrepreneur, and essentially they lost their income basically due to COVID-19. And is there any way to build a recession-proof business?
Yeah, and I see the other question about, is there any industry which is more crisis-proof than the others?
Yeah.
These kind of go together. And they're good questions. Thank you for asking. I think that the hard thing about saying like, what is the recession-proof business or the crisis-proof business is it's unpredictable. And I think what you're seeing right now is there are a lot of things that people would have thought, would never change. And what we are seeing through this, pandemic is that actually a lot of things have changed. I mean, I think it would be hard to imagine if you could go back and tell yourself like a year ago, here's what the world is going to be like. Even if you have lived through something like SARS, like I said, it's very different. The idea that around the entire world, like travel is going to drop, to 10% of what it was a year ago, and every single event and concert and sporting of like that they're going to be like, you would just never imagine that. So I think it's hard to say what is going to be the crisis-proof thing or the recession-proof thing. If there is anything, it's so the question, the first part is like, I'm a programmer and an indie entrepreneur. Well, because your app is no longer bringing income. Well, the thing that is crisis-proof or recession-proof is you. It's not your app. It's you. You have this programming skill. It's not like apps don't exist now. Now all of a sudden there's an opportunity for more apps, for different kinds of apps, for connecting people. Now all this research into like contact tracing and such, and more entertainment. People are spending more time playing games and watching movies. So I just feel like there's always going to be opportunities. What is recession proof is your skill, and you built this programming skill. Maybe it's time to build another app. And for Titus, same kind of thing. Invest in yourself. For me, publishing is not a recession-proof business. Publishing could go. Something could happen with book publishing. Right now, actually, in the States in particular, it's hard with Amazon. It shows that my book is like 3.5 weeks, or 4 weeks to deliver to people. And here we're very conditioned to getting things very quickly now. Like we order something, we want it there tomorrow or the next day. And because of supply chain issues and everything else, that's hard. So I can't control that. But I know that there's still something I can do. Like if I can't write books tomorrow, I still have some skill that I could use in some other way. If the podcast goes away tomorrow, I can still do something else. So when you invest in yourself and build up your skills, that's the only recession-proof path, I think.
But I think sometimes it's also the whole romanticizing of your business or your product that I don't want to let this go because this is like, I took like years to build this. But if it's no longer relevant in a world that's no longer relevant, it's still relevant, like what you mentioned, but you just can't execute it in this certain way. But I realize some people do. I understand because building a business is not easy, and to let go of the Titanic and go on the life raft. And life raft saves life, but it's a freaking Titanic, yo. So
that's a great analogy. That's good. I'm gonna have to steal that from you and use that sometime. I like that.
Just keep it right. But I think, but what do you say to people like that? They are like, they are so in love with their Titanic, their sinking Titanic, that they just don't want to get on the life raft.
I mean, I think they know what they have to do. They know what they have to do. I would just encourage them to look. We just have to realize what's happening. Like we can't control this. If we could all, bring the Titanic, back to life, and have it not sink, we would. If we could press a button, Maverick's magic wand that you mentioned earlier, and have all of this stuff go away right now, then we would. But we could spend a long time, looking for a magic wand, and we're probably not going to find that or to raise the Titanic. So I think it's going to be much more productive, and much more effective to jump on the life raft. And I think it has to be where, the pain of making the change, is less than the pain of remaining in the situation. And so imagine you were on the Titanic, and one of the problems the Titanic had was they didn't have enough lifeboats, right? But imagine you're on the Titanic and there is enough lifeboats. There's one waiting for you, and you keep saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But finally, the ship is actually sinking. At that point, you're going to get on the life raft. Like you have to, like all of a sudden, once we have to do something, we are forced to do it. It's like we were saying earlier with remote work. People are resistant to that. Oh, I don't want to use Zoom. I don't want to do virtual meetings. And now you have to, okay, I'll get on the lifeboat. So what if you could accelerate that? What if you could say, you know what, I'm not going to wait until I'm forced, to get off the Titanic. I'm going to actually, do it now. Then I will be ahead of everybody else who is still, being stubborn and just waiting for something that wasn't going to change.
Yeah. Chris, are you okay with timing at the moment?
Yeah, I'm okay. I can do a few more minutes. Sure.
Okay, great.
The big question, the one that we had.
No, you want to ask this first? We can just go to the big question, actually. Yeah,
the big one. I think that one's kind of cool.
Yeah, let's do this. So Joyce actually wrote in, she's basically trying to create a dummy-proof business for her mentally challenged daughter that has drawing skills and art skills. So they are doing a B2C at the moment, business to consumer, and she's looking to do a B2B. What's your opinion about this?
Yeah, I just want to read the rest of the question here. And she says, because I was wondering why B2B, and she answers that here. It's mainly because in a B2B model, it would be easier to set up an SOP and also account management. Okay, run the business for her.
So she's like planning out for the sister to be a caregiver for the future?
Yeah. Right. Interesting. I've heard of a few people who have done this in different ways. There are some businesses, that have been built by people with those kinds of challenges or disabilities. And I think it's interesting about shifting to the B2B model. I mean, I think what has to happen is, obviously her sister needs to focus on the artworks, right? Like the sister, like that's what she does. This is the artwork. So the challenge, then for everybody else who's involved, or the daughter, daughter. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure I get that correct. Because there was a sister there too. So the challenge for everybody else involved is how can we build the infrastructure around this? How can we build the infrastructure, and how can we tell the right story? I think these are two things that go together. So the infrastructure is, okay, the artworks, how do I market the artworks? How do I ship the artworks or deliver them, and so on. And the story is, why is this significant and interesting? And I think it's partly about the art, and I think it's partly about the daughter. Obviously, you have to do this in the right way, the right tone, the right message, and such. But I think these are the two tasks that you have to then, the paths that you have to go down. Like one is, what am I going to do with the actual change from B2C to B2B to make that a process that's easier to follow, and then what is the what is the story about this? Why should people care about these artworks? How can we do this in a way that is like appropriate and respectful, but it's also like, hey, this artwork is really cool. So I think, I don't know exactly every step involved there, but I think those are the two pathways that you start thinking about. What do you guys think? What would you say?
Well, I think because when it comes to social enterprises or community projects, I think the story goes a long way. I think one thing we can learn from Tom's, for example, where you buy a pair, you give a pair. So it's something that's relatable. So Tom's may not have the best designs. Sorry, Tom's, but
I think it's true. They don't.
But that doesn't change, and it's not the most comfy shoes as well, So, but a lot of times when people would, I think as a marketer, I always look at it that way: is that you need to give the justifications to the consumer to buy your product. So if I buy Tom's, I'm like, and someone that Daniel asked me, no, why are you wearing this, design that's really bad? If I don't have a story to come back at Daniel, I would lose my faith in Tom's. But let's say the fact that, Daniel, when I buy these shoes, one kid in Nigeria is having another pair as well. The fact that I can propagate that message, it means that it justifies my purchase. Apple is very good at doing this. The moment you hold an iPhone, it's like, oh, you're cool and you're stylish. Everybody else is dumb. So the kind of message that it propagates, but because they have already given the justification not to the user, but also to the market as well. So the moment someone comes up with a Rolex, this guy is rich. We make that kind of automatic assumptions, but it can be a fake, right? So I think you've been in lots of Asian countries where there are fake Rolexes, but some people just pull it off. So,
yeah.
I think, in short, I really don't think they should go B2B. The sales process is way too long. And I think because of this product has a lot more emotional tone, like what Maverick said, it should really go B2C.
The end user, right?
Yeah, at the end user. And there's a lot more stuff that can be automated over B2C than B2B, because B2B, you need to service the client, and there's a lot other processes. It sounds nice. But I think that there are more tools of automation that can be done over B2C.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's good.
Cool. Do we do that?
Yeah, we will want to do a book giveaway actually. So we have people who have registered, and let me just get this thing up.
Well, I put in my name 3 times just to...
No, you did not. I make sure that to remove
Maverick 1, Maverick 2, Maverick 3.
I'm gonna shuffle. I'm gonna shuffle a bit more actually.
Nice.
So that's like what, 200-300 old people can't even see the names, man.
Yeah, it's a lot. Me? No. Yes. No.
Who's that?
It's Dell.
Who's that?
Okay, I have to find in terms of Dell, but Dell, we will send you a book. We will figure a way. I also want to actually just because Chris has been so gracious to actually give out a book. We want to give out a book, and I have actually going to select Joyce for that, because that's a really wonderful question, and thank you very much for asking that.
Oh wait, you know that? I'm going to do another book as well. Pull the thing one more time, give a guy another chance. I'm going to sponsor that book.
Okay, so everybody gets a book. Three people at least.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.
We need to share the screen, man. I can't see.
I can't see. Otherwise, it may be like, rigged or fake or something.
Let me share the screen again. Sorry about that.
How do we know you're not just choosing the winner?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Kimberly.
Kimberly. Okay, Kimberly, who you are, guy or girl, could work both ways. You get a book.
We're not assuming. Yeah. Okay. So one book for Joyce, one book for Dell, and one book for Kimberly. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is awesome. May you say like she feels like in opera now, but we will.
You get a book.
That's right. You get a book. That's right.
But actually, you can get to read the book, because I think Chris has this blockchain project that you are launching.
Yes, I'm working on something. So for right now, I have to say that that part of the process is for US only. Anybody can be a donor to the process, but we're only shipping books in the US for this new thing. And eventually maybe I will be able to expand it. But they can read more about that at moneytreebook.com. If you'd like to read the book in Malaysia, I assume it's available on audio or ebook there. And any bookshop, if it's online or offline, should be able to import it as well.
Yeah. Any final advice for our audience, and what will you want to leave them with?
Oh, I don't know if I have any final advice. This has been a wonderful conversation. People have really smart questions. It's great. And so thank you so much, Daniel and Maverick, for facilitating. Hopefully at some point I'll be able to come back to Malaysia and we can do this in person with lots of people, and we can even shake hands. You know, it will happen one day, I believe.
No, with okay, so I got to ask this though. That tree behind you, is it prop or is it like to represent money? No, the tree behind you, like right now.
Yeah, I carry it around with me everywhere. Actually, when I go out, you know, when I go for my run, I carry it with me, and it's marketing basically.
Yeah, so because you did that with the bicycle for the $100 startup, so you know, so I guess the next one.
Yeah, the bicycle was easier actually. It was easier to go out with the bicycle. This I should have thought about it a little bit because it's hard, you know. But
you should staple a dollar bill at the lift, and then it will be so beautiful. Actually,
it's a good idea. I'll do that.
Okay, man. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for making time for us. Really appreciative.
Guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
And for those who want to read his book, it's actually available at Amazon if you can get it. And yeah, we will be sending the books to the lucky winner soon. So stay tuned. So we'll.
And regards to Jolie.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sorry, we have to like steal you away from bed. You can go back right now. So.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. I've got more calls today, so I'm good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. We'll hope to see you soon.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.